Hey, this is Paul Gale Network with Indie Mania 2025. I am here at WayForward Studios with Voldy, Matt, and Adam. How are y'all doing today?
Great.
Hello.
Hey.
Yeah, doing great.
Thank you so much for being a part of Indie Mania. It was a pleasure having you on board last year at the first Indie Mania. And the interview we had last time, our teleporting sequence, all of it turned out great. And I'm looking forward to today's interview. So thank you again.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Let's start this thing off with asking Matt a question. You know, directing
Okay.
Shantae Advance and Sigma Star Saga DX
Okay.
must have felt like juggling two different universes simultaneously. What's one unexpected skill or habit you've developed to keep both projects' distinct energies in check? And did it influence your daily life at all?
Okay.
That's a loaded question.
Yeah, that's a. Oh my gosh. Yeah, there were multiple parts to that. Yeah, well, thankfully it wasn't too much juggling because the one Shantae Advance was mostly done. It was done. My work on it was mostly done, and it was in QA before I got too deep into Sigma Star Saga. So, Sigma Star Saga DX. So, but both of them are interesting because they're both these like time capsule games. So going back and working on with Mike Straggy, the original programmer of our GBA tech, and the Shantae Advanced programmer. We got to work together, go back, reopen our code. Well, his code. I don't program anything.
Yeah.
More art side. But yeah, I don't know. New skills. You're asking about like how the keeping it separate.
Mhm.
I have a pretty easy time keeping different universes of different fictional things separate to me because the characters kind of I don't know, for me they sort of live outside of the game world, so I can sort of keep those distinct. But yeah, I think if anything, there was I was more familiar with Shantae. Shantae's been like nonstop for the most part for all of this time for 20 years. Sigma Star Saga was one moment in time and then sort of put aside, and then I don't typically go back to it. I don't revisit those characters for any reason, So I kind of had to go back and get reacquainted, like what was going on with these characters at that. Why were they written the way? I mean, you probably remember some of the things
20 years ago.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
like, well, what were we watching? What was on TV? What were we reading? What movies were out? What influenced these characters to become the characters that they are? Because they weren't just spawned out of nothing. They kind of are a product of their day. So that was a little bit challenging. So I guess that's it. One of them had to get the whole characters and their existence brought back up to speed. The other ones I was familiar with because it's like the characters I feel like I get to work with every day with the Shantae ones. So yeah, I guess that was kind of one of the bigger challenges that really is different between the two games.
Well, that's cool.
Right?
That's a fun process, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Oh.
it was good. It was good fun. Good fun.
Yeah. Voldy, for WayForward's 35th anniversary, it's a huge deal. And I'm proud of you all, and I'm excited to see what you have going forward. Looking back, what's one game or project from the early days that you think deserves a modern revival like Sigma Star Saga DX? And why would it resonate with today's gamer?
Just one game? I would like all of them.
All right,
Name a few.
Pick a dozen.
Okay, so do you mean like ones that would also get a physical re-release, like a physical GBA cart, or just a modern console port?
I like the idea of you answering both questions because physical is pretty awesome, but yeah, let's go with both.
Okay, well, one that we actually get quite a lot of people asking about is Wendy Every Which Way. Was Wendy the Witch?
Game Boy Color.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
Game Boy Color.
Old
So
school.
that one would have to be on the list. But one of my personal favorites is Godzilla Domination for GBA, and then another, I guess, lesser known gem is the Justice League Flash game that Adam directed.
That's
actually.
a good game.
It was
Yeah.
really good,
That
and
was
I
a
feel
fun
like
one.
it wasn't as widely recognized. I'm not sure why. Like it wasn't, but anyway, that would be a good one. But if I had to pick just one, I'd probably go with Godzilla Domination because I remember we spent a lot of time getting the multiplayer working. and use the link cable. And I don't have any stats on this, but I would imagine that it's kind of a hassle to set up. I think it probably didn't get played in a multiplayer setting as much as it should have.
Deserve to.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I mean, for the GBA cart re-release, excuse me, that would still be the case. But for the modern console port, all consoles now support multiplayer with no problem. So I think I'd like to see that one if I had to pick just one.
Easier to see your creative vision realized thanks to modern tech.
Oh, well, okay. One thing I should add, I know you didn't ask this, but I would love to do more full remasters, like what we did with DuckTales Remastered.
Yes.
So instead of just, like an enhanced, like a port plus, fixing quality of life issues and small additions, I would love to see a full remaster. And any of those would be great candidates for that. But I would say the first one we would probably start out with would be the original Shantae, the Game Boy Color game, because
we get a lot of requests for that.
That comes up very often. Yeah.
Well, and actually, since Matt's right here, I do have a question for you.
Sure. Oh no!
Put him on the spot.
I'm on the spot. Oh my gosh!
If we were to do like a full HD 4K remaster,
okay,
do you think it would?
Of Shantae 1 of the.
The Shantae, first Shantae game.
Okay.
Do you think it would likely be like 2D on 2D, like Seven Sirens, or do you think it would be 2D characters on 3D backgrounds, like Half Genie Hero, or would it be something new, like 3D characters on 3D backgrounds?
Got it. Okay. Without thinking about it too much, I would assume it would be 2D.
We're not announcing anything right here. This is
they are announcing everything. This is not hypothetical.
No, this is.
I just stepped in as publisher. Nothing's being announced.
This is great. This is basically like how a weekly meeting goes. We're all just riffing. I guess I would assume that would be the 2D, like the Seven Sirens stuff, because without thinking through the whole game right now, I mean, I guess I could try to think about it, but the way a lot of the visual language in that game, I mean, the gameplay and how you do things has a lot to do with how things are. It's very, what am I saying? It's very 2D in its DNA. Half Genie Hero has some things that have to be done the way they're done because it incorporates 3D. So you can't do certain layering tricks. You can't fake certain stuff. It actually has to exist three-dimensionally, even though the characters are cardboard cutouts flat. Certain things, like when you fight the poop tooth boss at the start, the big pirate ship thing with the slug on it, that thing has to spatially exist.
And running around the circular boss. There's more spatial, like continuously spatial stuff in Half Genie Hero.
Yeah, and Shantae 1, you could do it, but it would start if you did the 2D characters on 3D background, like diorama style, or 3D characters in 3D background. There's more reinterpreting how the gameplay would behave. So if you wanted to be really authentic, it would be 2D and 2D. If it was open to some interpretation, either of the hybrid approaches would totally work. Yeah, that's where my head goes with it. I think the thing that most people probably would expect is that whatever we do, we're cracking open some of the more archaic, weird stuff about the game. Like, Metroidvanias, they're all over the place now, but they were not quite so common back then, and definitely not something that independent studios were doing. And I think since it was it was our first time doing a game like that, there's a lot of choices where it's like, oh, the save system. It works like more of an arcade game would work, or
And you kind of had an opportunity to do some of that stuff on Sigma Star. We didn't just port it. You actually got to make some of the tweaks that made it feel more, a perfect game to play in 2025, right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that game's been slightly modernized for quality of life. But Shantae 1, a lot of core systems would need to be modernized just to make it not feel frustrating. So, that's a good question. There's a lot to unpack there. That's not even. I feel like that's not even the tip of the iceberg. But great question. If we did that, it would be a lot of fun to figure that stuff out.
Awesome to think of too. Yeah. We get to see the final product, but we don't know all of what went into the thought process necessarily, and how just this simple art decision could totally change the dynamics of the game. So
for sure.
And this was just his off the cuff thoughts. if this ever came out, which we're not announcing it.
I feel like I'm getting.
Nothing.
I feel like I'm signing up
If
for
it
something in
ever
real
did
time.
You
come
are,
out,
actually.
You can then ask as a retrospective and
Right.
see how this compares to his initial thoughts.
Yeah, we'll
Right.
rewind to this in a couple of years when they do that.
Right.
Which you heard here first.
There you go.
All right, Adam. As assistant director of the
Yes.
original Sigma Star saga, what's one moment from the 2005 development that still makes you laugh or cringe, and how did it shape your approach to approaching DX?
So, I mean, I think the thing that was really interesting for me about that was I was hired. So now I'm head of biz dev and publishing, and I work with these guys on kind of, general strategy for the company. But I was hired in 2004 as an animator, a pixel animator. And I think it really speaks to both Voldy and Matt in terms of like looking at the potential of our staff. And that as I was animating, tons and tons of sequences on Sigma Star Saga, I did a lot of the cinematic stuff. Matt, I think, kind of recognized, hey, this guy has some design ideas. Hey, this guy has some, ideas about level design and backgrounds and stuff like that. And he very generously kept giving me more responsibility. And so over the course of the game, I started as an animator, and by the end, I was helping out with so many areas. And I was doing a lot of the shmup areas, and Matt was doing more of the kind of 3/4 and story stuff. But I mean, it's kind of a very broad answer, but I think that's my favorite memory of it is just the fact that I was able to grow in my role over the course of a game. It wasn't just like, hey, I finished one game, let's try you out in a new capacity. And that was just so satisfying. I'm so thankful to Matt and for Voldy for giving me that opportunity. And it really is kind of how we've raised a lot of our directors at WayForward. A lot of people come in either through an internship or a level designer or something like that, and we see that kind of spark with them. And often under the tutelage of Matt, we'll raise them up. And now some of our best directors, James and Tom and Bannon and Herbster and everybody are came in under different roles, and then they got to raise up. So for me, that's my best memory, is just getting to experiment. And also I think because there's so much content in that game, I think when you have a lot of stuff that you need to do, it's in a way better than if you're doing a game where there's very little. So we had to crank out, I don't even know, like over a dozen giant shooter bosses and hundreds of stages and stuff. And I think in a sort of trial by fire way, that really trains you to be a director, having to do so much content within like less than a year, basically.
It's in depth.
Yeah.
This could go for any of you, all of you. Sorry, I'll cut that one out. This could go for any of you. The pixel art in Shantae Advance Risky Revolution is a love letter to the Game Boy Advance era. What's the trickiest part of balancing retro authenticity with modern style, polish, and is there a specific visual detail you're obsessed with in the game?
Oh, this is probably a me question, right? So, all right. What's interesting about this one is it's yeah, you framed it as like a love letter to Game Boy Advance. So what's interesting is it's like, since this one's not an homage and it actually is a Game Boy Advance game, um you're stuck. Like, there's no advantages of having waited 20 years. Like, it's the same. All we did is reopen the same code and project and just kept working. It's very unusual. Like this, for those who don't know, this game we developed in 2004. Whenever we say it's canceled, it's canceled. The Shantae sequel, it's canceled. We canceled it. I mean, you and me canceled it. I think I canceled it probably more than you did. I kind of just assumed we needed to stop for like funding reasons, and publishers weren't picking it up. And we tried everybody. We knocked on every door. We're like, it's a lost cause. We should just stop. So in in 2023, wow, which now is in the past. That's funny. We just, Mike Straggy, me, like Aaron, just a tiny group, reopened our files that we had just zipped up and put away in when it was at 2004. Opened them up 20 years later and just kept working. So to keep them authentic is kind of almost like the easy part. Like, it had to be, because like half of the work was already done. So the new animation, new sprites, I think the stuff that was a little bit different from what I would have expected is I did do a lot of the new animation. Half the game was done roughly. Of the stuff that hadn't been done yet, excuse me, Certain bad guys, most of the bosses hadn't been done. Andrew Botto came in and did it, but we worked with him, pixel animator and artist for years. And then my son, who's Aaron and I have two kids. They're both animators, both adults now. Both work on various Shantae games. For me, I was training him in how to do this animation style. So that was new and super cool.
He wasn't even born yet. When
No,
the
when the first game,
Wild.
no.
when it was started.
So the trick, yeah. So how do you maintain a balance and authenticity? It's easy. Make a person and then grow them for 20 years, and then teach them, teach them how to do the same
Have the
stuff.
legacy continue
Right.
naturally.
Yeah, and then and you know, it's obvious, but like I don't expect him to ever have to do any of this again.
That's how you hire
do
all
what
our
he wants,
assistants.
right?
We just give
Bird
birth
of
to
the-
them.
bird of
and
the
then
right,
raise
right,
them,
right.
yeah.
But I can't help but notice how weird it is. It's like actually super cool.
And I
But,
mean,
yeah.
I mean, some of it, Matt, is just limitations that are actual hard limitations. Because
Yeah,
we do a lot of pixel games, but when we're doing like a Mummy Demastered or a River City Girls or a Halloween or an Evil Dead, it looks like old school pixel art. But really, we can do as many animation frames as we want. We can do as many colors as we want. We can make it as smooth as we want. I remember I started on GBA when I joined the company.
Oh, yeah.
That is absolutely not like you're very restricted in terms of palette and tiles
Oh,
and
yeah.
animation
Oh, yeah.
counts and all that, right?
Oh yeah. There's only it's the reason the sprites look the way they do is it's kind of like, well, if you're gonna have you get a 16 color row to make your character. One color is going to be alpha, that's transparent. That leaves you with, at best, 3 ramps, light to dark of maybe 3 different colors a piece. It really starts to affect your character design, what you come up with. Our characters have dark outlines. They usually have bright eyes or highlights on them that removes a couple more colors.
Wow.
So now you're down to, all right, well, so you notice most of the things in I think Shantae 1, almost everything is 1 to 2 color character combos. You'll have a character who's purple and green, right? It's like, okay, they're outlined, they've got white eyes, they've got a purple and a green or something. That's like as complex. In this one, it tends to be 3 main colors per character, and that helps to sort of set a style. I mean, it forces cohesion. So when you're asking about how do you keep it consistent, well, the technical restrictions force you to, because the moment that if you go, well, I'm going to make a character and have 4 different colors in it, it's like, well, then you've got nothing to blend with. You don't have if you got a red, you don't have a dark red. You're out of colors. So yeah, it kind of forces these things. That's why I think there's a certain kind of I'm not saying all Game Boy Advance games look the same. They're actually very different, but you have to like come up with ways to express different art styles, but still using the shared restrictions. Like you're not going to get more tiles out of the thing somehow, or colors. I mean, people have done cool homebrew tricks, but I mean, for a mainline game, I say mainline game. It's like a Game Boy Advance game in 2024, 25, but it still follows all the rules as though. I mean, this game, if this had come out in 2004, it would have been a regular mainline.
Yeah.
Released in stores. It would have been. I'm pretty sure it would have been $39.99 at retail. Like we know all the data points of what it would have been, what cartridge it would have been. Cartridge size mattered. You basically the bigger your game is, the more expensive it has to cost because they have to manufacture a bigger chip. Haven't seen days like that for 20 years.
Yep.
Although they're kind of back again today, aren't they?
I was going to say,
Yeah,
we're seeing that kind of right now.
It's like, well, if you got too big of a game, maybe a bunch of it gets downloaded. That's kind of like been a hot topic recently.
Mm-hmm.
But we were, forged in that crucible. It's like, keep your game to what, 16-bit, or not 16-bit, 16 megabit?
Yeah.
What is that, 4 megabyte? Get the cheap cart?
Yeah, we would have to negotiate with our publishers, like say, can we please get a larger cart because we want to get all our bosses in, we want to get all of our stages.
2 megabytes. Sorry,
2 megabytes,
that's why I don't do.
Yeah, nothing enforces authenticity like hardware restrictions, and since this
Right.
was coming out on that hardware, it pretty much was forced into it. The only thing we could have done is we could have added more RAM. That's the one thing you can do now. Not RAM, but ROM space.
Right.
So we could have had a bigger ROM.
Right.
But
because it's a custom cart.
It's a custom cart. And
but the
we
system
we
still
kept it the
has to
same.
push the same data.
Right.
You're still limited by the actual Game Boy Advance.
And can only bank as many. I mean, they have workarounds to bank more ROM space, but we just stuck with the original limitations.
Yep.
So you can see there's a very real struggle in all of the balance that goes behind the development side, the publishing side, the hardware limitation, the physical medium limitation of a different era, and coming back in a way in the modern era. But it's all intriguing. Speaking of intriguing, I love Shantae's humor, I guess you could say. I love the comedic approach to the game. It always feels playful and almost like anime-esque, fun with gaming culture in general and pop culture. It sticks well. What it was back then and now, the character has evolved with the times. She's still herself, but hasn't been lost at all, and is still fun and whimsical. If you could have a Shantae cameo in any other game or media franchise to kind of bring her sense of comedy, her vibe to, or whatever you want to do, where would you send her, and what would shake things up? How would she shake things up in that world?
Oh,
I mean, I guess you could pick game. I guess you could pick TV show, movie. There's a lot.
Okay,
maybe we'll be here for another 2 hours on this one.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, so the go-to answer usually is like, because I know fans always ask this, is like, oh, put her in Smash Brothers. So that's the main thing. Is like, oh, put her in there.
Would you like to see her in Smash Brothers?
Oh my gosh, that'd be so cool.
Okay. You've heard it.
That's not up
confirmed.
to us.
It's coming.
It's a yes from us.
I'm going to get them in trouble by saying everything they're saying that's a good idea is confirmed.
Oh yeah, no, that's just the thing. That's the go-to. If you could, and I mean that like sincerely. If there was like a hey, could you pick one? Yeah, that probably that.
Okay.
But what that wouldn't get is like to get the humor and personality across. Those are not games with like a lot of narrative and story. Like that would usually mean that it's got to be done through animation and moveset, and where do you put the whimsy and stuff. I think that's how you'd have to do that. Because if it wasn't, because that game is so gameplay first, and I mean that in a good way. It's like if you were to take away the gameplay, there's not a whole lot of just fluff around there, and sometimes the personality and the writing or like I guess I'd say the jokes. They live in the fluff space. So yeah, man, that's a good question.
Here, I have a suggestion while you're thinking of one. I bet that a good crossover, just because I know what you like and sensibilities, it always felt to me like Disgaea would be a very natural crossover with Shantae.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah,
because you're a big fan of Etna and all those characters.
Oh, I love them. I love the artwork from that series. Yeah, you're right, and they do have lots of moments where you can put in the funny one-liners.
It's very funny.
The games are long enough that you could set up a joke and then you could revisit it a couple of times and build it over the course of some hours. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. Wow.
What else? What else? Cartoon or a gaming series? Where would you love her to cameo?
Genshin Impact.
Sure. I do play some of those games too, like the Zenless and all that.
Or hang out with the HoloLive girls.
Yeah, I don't. Oh. I would. That would be fun too. Yeah, I think this is a tough question. I think that
too many fun possibilities.
She fits in a lot of good places. I think it's almost like, well, we're back on the restrictions thing. It's almost like restrict that down and then force me to fit it into only a couple of choices. It makes things a lot easier. But yeah, oh my gosh,
Pac-Man.
Yeah, put her in Pac-Man. That'd be awesome. Yeah.
Like, what do we have around here that she can fit into?
Right. I don't know. It's just she fit into a lot of stuff. Yeah, it would be it works well when there's places to showcase animation and personality and music.
Are there any like TV series or anime that kind of helped influence the style of the humor that you've come up with? Like, I know you're a fan of Ranma and some of the older anime. Like, what are some classic anime or current anime that she might, be a good crossover for stylistically?
Yeah, the personality fits well in Ranma, and a lot. It's funny, but like a lot of the personality and quirkiness of the writing and the way the characters are handled is very like season 1 Pokemon. Like how that's
definitely
a lot more just like out there and bizarre. I really enjoy that stuff. As far as the tone of even the comics, very similar to the first run of the of the Pokemon Adventures comics. You know how those are.
Yep.
Those I find, and I mean, you guys know because you know me well. Is the tone of those comics? I'm going off a little bit here, but the tone of those comics reminds me quite a lot of the Carl Barks Scrooge McDuck, which I really like. And so yeah, it's a good fit for that. I know she doesn't visually fit into things like DuckTales or necessarily Pokemon. Well, maybe Pokemon a little bit. But I like I feel like the characters could, if they can't physically shake hands because it would look weird, I feel like they could definitely converse and speak to each other in those languages because the tone is right. So, wow.
Those are good ones.
Okay, are these good answers? I feel a little bit all over the place, but she's scalable. I feel like you could put her in a Street Fighter, she would just look very different. You could put her as a NPC in a Pokemon game, she would just look this other way. I don't know. Put her in a Miku dance game. That would be cool. Because you got the music, the dancing component. Characters designs are compatible enough. Yeah,
She could team up with Mega Man.
They're those are very compatible art styles and somewhat by design. Honestly, I mean that's part of why Capcom was, I think, intrigued and published the first game. They said it was very familiar and seemed like similar to something they would have made themselves. That's pretty cool. Yeah, and you know that a lot of Aaron worked on Futurama. Aaron again, Aaron, the creator of Shantae, she worked on Futurama seasons 1 through 3, maybe 4, 1, 2, and 3 for sure. There's definitely some of that humor mixed in because that was that show was like kind of the backdrop of both of our lives, just because she was working there, but I was a sponge, I would soak it all up. So yeah, I don't know. There's a mix. There's anime, there's anime, there's comics, there's TV, there's old school 80s cartoons. We kind of referenced all of it, but all of that is mixed in there. She's a hybrid of many things.
Well, definitely. Cool, thank you. Okay, Voldy, after 35 years, WayForward has worked on everything from original to licensed projects. What's one unexpected trend in gaming that you've seen evolve over the decades that has influenced WayForward's approach to projects such as Sigma Star Saga DX? And if I'm not mistaken, it's not just dozens of projects. From last year's Indie Mania interview, you've worked on over 200, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I just had to throw that in because I'm like,
we lost track somewhere.
We lost track, and we even had that joke like, should you ever redo it? Like, it might take more time to count than to develop a game, or something like that. But yeah, what have you seen? What trends?
Well, one trend that I found completely unexpected was that releasing physical carts for games like decades after the console was officially discontinued would actually be a viable business model. That was, I never would have thought that like physical GBA carts, new ones, would be a thing. But
a major pro, I'm sure.
Oh yeah,
a major
oh,
win.
it's great.
Totally
we love
cool.
it. We love it.
Oh, we love it too.
It was a surprise, very unexpected. But as far as like actual, I think it's probably more asking more about like gameplay habits and things that players expect. Let's see. One thing is I feel like players tend to be more impatient. And I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying this, or I don't know. This is why I'm usually not allowed on interviews. For
why are they so impatient? Why are they impatient about?
Yeah. So this.
Tell us now. Tell us why are they so impatient?
So you're watching this now, being like, "Come on, get to the point."
What's going on? 1.5 speed. Go. Put it to 2 times speed. Just speed it up.
Yeah. We can double speed play back. But no. So like, I mean, in the old days, games could be pretty brutal. Like if you lose all your lives, then you start over from scratch.
Oh.
But we were okay with that. Like it was, I don't know. I feel like we had a higher tolerance for kind of like.
I know what you're talking about. Like die and retry and dragging the thing out was value. Like we'd actually be told like make the games. People need the game to be harder so that it like takes longer to go through it.
Yeah,
else you can't. Or like, how are we going to charge a full price for a game?
They were 30-minute games, but it would take you days to complete it.
Just because you kept dying and starting over. So now, But now it's different. I feel like, most games, like, you die and then it just respawns you like 5 feet before and with a health pack and like a warm hug or something. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Actually, I think it's made it more accessible. It's made games more accessible to a wider audience. So it's probably good. And I guess, I mean, if players have those masochistic tendencies, they can play like Dark Souls or something. So, but anyway, that's one of the trends I've noticed is that there's more, like easy mode, like more ways to get through a game without like those frustrating moments where you just throw your GBA.
Another big change that's more on the kind of business side that relates specifically to Sigma Star Saga is when I joined the studio 20 years ago, we were the game in a box studio. So it's like, hey, they need a SpongeBob game in 8 months. They needed a Batman game in 8 months. So it's like somebody put a game in that box. That's what we did. Now it's completely changed. Most of the deals now we're putting together. So for example, something like Sigma Star, that's WayForward basically saying, hey, we get asked about this a lot. Let's talk to Bandai Namco. Let's work out a deal for the rights to it. Let's start porting it. Let's get it funded. So many of our deals now, probably over half of them, initiate with us, and then we have to put them together, which is challenging. But it also means we're working on games that are exactly what WayForward wants to work on.
Yeah, right. And if you're talking about like general trends in gaming that I guess don't really apply to this, seems like more and more games are games as a service, right? Like they're out there forever and they keep adding DLC and so it, in a way, it's kind of fun and interesting and refreshing. Going back to the old days where we can make a game and know that like we're not going to be adding DLC. There's no chance. It's burnt on a cart, right? So it is kind of interesting because these days it seems like most games, even if they're not traditional games as a service, they're there's always thought of, well, can we add DLC? Can we add more, expansion, stuff like that? So, I mean, that's a general, if you're talking about general trends, which thankfully doesn't apply to Sigma Star Saga DX.
Oh, cool. And no, you've definitely touched on something that I'm pretty familiar with too, and that is that fast food, fast internet, fast travel mentality that the world has gotten more and more used to because younger and younger generation has things with quicker access. You don't have to wait for the TV commercial. You could just skip it. You don't have to wait till that day of the week for the show to go on. It's available on streaming. Your internet, you're not waiting 20 minutes to download and watch a 2-minute trailer of a new video game. It's there. You don't have to go to the store, get a VHS tape, and then watch that tape just for a trailer for a new movie. You have it instantly available on YouTube, and this applies to then everything. And so in gaming, yeah, that's a very interesting thing because like in the world of martial arts, when I'm teaching, I could also see it a little bit of a different trend starting to change in how quickly people want their belts. How quickly do people want to advance forward in learning the next new skill, the next new form? And it's like, no, get good at this one first before it. There is a way to do it. But yeah, interesting stuff. It applies in so many different areas. All right, Adam, since we're on Sigma Star DX. All right, Adam, since we are on Sigma Star Saga DX, it is a blend of RPG and shoot 'em up that feels bold even today. If you could borrow one gameplay mechanic from another game to spice up DX even more so, what would you pick and how would it fit in Rocker's Adventure?
That's a tough one. Yeah, I mean, I think WayForward, we tend to love doing genre mashups. I mean, you guys were doing it even before I joined the company, and definitely one of our biggest mashups was in Sigma Star, where it's, the overworld mode is very three-quarters Zelda adventure game, and then you go into random battles, but as opposed to turn-based or a lot of other mechanics, it goes into a shmup battle. So, that was very interesting to mash those two together. I don't know. I'm not sure. Nothing springs to mind as far as like, oh, we got to get more, one more genre in there. We have dabbled with it. Like we have a game called Cat Girl where the whole conceit is basically it has like 50 genres like shoved into it. So, but I don't know if it would actually apply on this one. I would say, I mean, if we were going to like remaster it, like it wasn't still using the pixel stuff. I think maybe we would look into getting some of the presentation elements that we've gotten better at recently, like maybe look into full VO, definitely look into like cinematic sequences. We got really good with those on the Shantae games and Advance Wars and stuff like that. So I can see those kind of presentational elements, but I don't know. Yeah, Matt, what do you think? I can't think of any actual gameplay that I would shove in there.
either.
It's kind of stuffed out already with a lot of stuff.
I keep thinking what I'm thinking you would put in there.
Yeah.
I'm like, what would Adam put in? I keep thinking like, would you put a relationship sim
I would just
in there?
say,
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, there
I
is
feel like you would. I feel like you would at least
Dating advice.
dabble
Yes.
with it.
it
Right.
is true. The
Yeah,
game,
Because you
Going.
could like
the crux of the game is sort of a love triangle. So yeah,
Right.
maybe something where there's some gaminess to that, like a heart meter for Simon and Scarlet. Sure, maybe
Right.
that would work.
right, because the way it works now, I won't ruin anything, but there's multiple. I think there's four. I know there's four endings to the game, but a lot of them have to do with the relationship between
exactly.
characters. Except it's not complex. It's just
Right.
it's just it comes down to one or two interactions that happen like during actual shoot 'em up gameplay. So yeah, in that sense, it's just like get to this place, blow up this one thing. We set a flag, and then that's your ending. But yeah, you could have a much more complex.
Yes, you could go. I do remember, like when we were producing it again, because I was starting as an animator. My goodness, there is so much in-game cinematics. I remember doing literally hundreds of scripted animations where it's just
Mhm.
people toasting a cup, or people giving someone a hug, or people like just cinematic stuff. I mean, at the time that as far as pixel stuff, that must have been the most cinematically ambitious game that you guys had done, right?
Yeah,
For
we
the
have.
pixel
I
stuff.
don't think we've done anything like that before.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I
Yeah,
can't
so
think of anything even close to that.
maybe just get pumping up the presentation on that, because I think that's the stuff that we've gotten so much better
Mhm.
at in the past 20 years is presentation on story, presentation on audio, presentation on movies, and character illustration, all that stuff. I think it's not quite a genre, it doesn't quite answer the question, but I think if we were going to kind of keep expanding, definitely we could beef up some of that even more.
Cool. Back to Shantae. The
Oh my
series, like, what else are we going to talk about? We gotta get back to Shantae. It's a series that has a passionate fan base that loves music and dance motifs. Matt, if you could pair Shantae with a real-world musician or a band for a dream soundtrack, who'd you choose, and how would their vibe fit Sequinland?
Okay.
I actually don't know any about your musical tastes.
I listen to a lot of. I listen to so many random things, and it's not one specific band. Like you're asking me to name a band, I'm like, I don't know if I can name a band. Like and I know so many songs, but usually not by name. I listen to everything. My gosh,
I'm
like,
similar in that. I couldn't
who's-
tell you who
What
sings
about
what.
a genre?
Or I was going to say, who sings the end credit song in the Shantae movie? What band?
Oh, that's a good one.
in the movie.
Yeah,
in like
because
in
you
like
have
a
to have a pop band
You
end
heard it
credits.
first
in a
here.
in a
Yeah.
live
Yeah.
action movie.
We
Live
are
action
doing a
Shantae
live
movie.
action.
Is it
I
like-
said we, because I'm actually
Not
going
announcing,
to
not
do
announcing.
the motion capture for
Is it like
Shantae.
Cindy Lauper, like the
Cindy Lauper,
like the
good one.
like the
Audition for
Goonies
it.
movie?
Yeah.
Auditions next week.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know, man. I feel like an entire game soundtrack that was all Steve Martin with banjo.
He's really good.
Yeah,
Wow.
and then tailor everything around that.
Yeah.
Like the visuals, the gameplay, just lots of yeah. I'm trying to give a real answer.
I like it.
Yeah.
Or just like
Kermit the Frog
yodeling.
would
Just
sing.
actually, hold on, wait. I actually have a real answer. Thank you.
Okay.
Because an entire soundtrack made by Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem Band, all performed by Muppets.
Oh.
Oh.
Yes, that is your answer.
Oh.
So you have your game, but then when it's time for the musical
Yes.
numbers, you cut to actual live action
Yeah.
Muppets, and because they're a real band, right?
With the animal drum solo.
Yeah, Dr. Teeth is a real dude.
Yeah.
I don't know who voices them anymore and if they actually sing. But yeah, I think that's your answer. You just do weird cutaways to live action of Muppets
I like
performing.
it.
Yes.
There you have it.
That's your answer. So like, do I know a band? Do I come up with a band name? I come up with a fictional Muppet band name. I do listen to lots and lots of music. Yeah, I man, I'm struggling to come up with something. It's like what? It's like a we'll just go through my playlist after
Yeah.
this, and I'll just start
Go
showing you
through.
all how
Yeah.
ridiculous it is. But there's
It
a
can be
lot
an
of game
outtake.
soundtracks.
Yeah.
Like a
There's-
B-roll at the end.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
there's a lot of J-pop stuff, things from
Mhm.
games, old '80s music that I love, like stuff like that.
That's
So-
actually something we're getting more into recently, and just in the past 5 years, we've started putting more vocal songs in our game, and a lot of them that we've done, Clock Tower, River City, stuff like that, are just directly reaching out to the artists that we love, and they're available. So,
Awesome.
Yeah.
very timely question.
That's cool. Voldy, WayForward's knack for quirky, character-driven games really sets it apart. What's one character from What's one character from either Shantae Advance or Sigma Star Saga DX that you think embodies WayForward's spirit, and how do they reflect your vision for the company's future?
So, I mean, are you asking about like me personally? Who do I identify with, or who do I think the company? Like,
Both.
That's interesting.
but okay.
Yeah.
Well, me personally,
Who are you?
okay. I've always identified most with Uncle Mimic because he's got that like experimental like ADHD dad energy. I guess I don't know.
Wow.
I don't know how you would
See, I
describe Uncle Mimic.
I always like rate him as some out of touch guy.
Oh, okay. See, it's
Oh,
perfect.
no.
It totally fits.
Oh,
Yeah, so-
Voldy, no.
okay, so I'm
Yeah.
Uncle Mimic.
But you know what? But he's also a nurturing, kind soul who's
He
deeply
does care about
invested.
Shantae.
That is
He's
the whole
trying
point.
to,
That is
like,
the whole point
you know,
of the
protect her.
yes.
He's-
That's
yeah,
the dichotomy
he tends
of the
to be
character.
very uncertain. See, it all fits.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
He's like,
I guess kind
that's
of.
gonna work, right? Like
I see where you're coming from. That's kind of that's kind of deep. Yeah.
I think a way forward probably. I mean, aside from obviously Shantae, I would say there's a lot of Roddy tops in our best games, because I think the games we do that end up resonating, they tend to have something mischievous or kind of a little bit subversive, and I just love the playfulness of that character.
Well, she's my favorite. Yeah,
She's my favorite,
Shantae character, Roddy Tops. But if I were to see, I think the company as a whole is probably more like, I mean, pretty much like any DLC or not any NPC character. They basically just kind of we just kind of do our thing, and then every now and then we like offer suggestions, like weirdly specific suggestions on interviews like this, you know, when people ask us questions.
Maybe
But
you should go
otherwise,
check that
we
cave down the road.
yeah, exactly.
And then we just
So-
wander around.
yeah, and then we just do our own thing, and then and every now and then we throw
We're
out a bit of
NPCs.
advice on a interview like this, and then
Voldy picks save guy, the old save.
yeah,
guy.
Right.
save guy.
Does he have a
Oh
name?
my
or is it
gosh,
just a
he's
save
the
guy?
save guy.
The save
Yeah.
guy.
Save guy.
Oh my gosh, I
Yeah,
love it.
WayForward's like
You're-
save guy.
Yeah, it sounds like we're a group, a motley crew. It's like, wow, I love it. You said Uncle Mimic. Oh my god. Oh, that's beautiful. Sorry, I'm actually still just like cracking up over that. I kind of love it.
That was good.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, Matt and Adam, both of your games this year revisit early 2000s ideas. If you could time travel back to 2005, let's say, and give your younger selves one piece of advice about making Shantae Advance or Sigma Star Saga pre-DX, what would it be, and how might have it changed the originals?
I'll answer Sigma Star since I didn't work on Shantae, and then you can answer Shantae.
Okay.
Honestly, I don't think I would change a thing. I really think that game for us was kind of lightning in a bottle. Again, so we were all so young when we were making it. You know, people were not married, or if they were married, they didn't have kids. So a lot of those games were just like, I remember, I think I animated like most of the bosses in like a 24-hour sprint or something. So
That's his advice. Don't have kids.
well, but
Don't
what
get
I
married
would
or
say
have
is
kids.
But that's the way forward
games
way
are
is to
not
have
better.
kids to,
Exactly.
you know,
That's true.
but I
Uncle
we wouldn't have
Mimic
any
doesn't have
employees.
kids.
Yeah,
if we didn't have
exactly.
kids.
All employees here.
But I think if I could go back in time, I don't think I would change anything on that one, because I think that we just, I think we did everything right, and I think it was just such a fun, growing time for the entire staff, who was all very young at the time. So on that one, yeah, I can't think of anything I would change, or I can't think of any like misstep we took that it's like, oh, we should have done this instead of this. We really just did a lot of fun stuff on the game, and so excited that people still talk about it 20 years later.
That one did go surprisingly well.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, what was the total time frame, development time?
Like Sigma Star Saga?
Like a year from
Yeah, a
like
little less,
including
maybe.
everything.
I want to say 9 months.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I
budgets
don't
were
re-
low back then. My gosh.
And not a lot of I don't know. There's always like chaos that happens on every game, but I feel like, unless I'm just not remembering it, but I feel like that one had
No,
less
it was.
We had a publisher that really trusted us. I mean,
Yeah,
Bandai
that's
Namco,
true. Yes.
at the time just Namco, and then Phil Cohen, our producer.
Phil Cohen, that's
When we
right.
have a
That's
publisher
why.
and a publisher producer that just says run with it,
Yeah.
that's where you get the best work from us, and it's also when you get the games with the most content in it, because you're just running on full speed the entire time. So we're just cramming in bosses and enemies and guns, just more and more and more. So yeah, really, that one, I can't think of anything I would change.
Right. Yeah, the tech was very mature. Like that was at the end of GBA.
Yeah.
So everything it had, like every trick that had been developed over each game, you could put all of them in there, which is pretty cool.
Now, Shantae, you did get to change, so it was totally up to you whether you wanted to keep the elements from 20 years ago or redo them or a half measure. So what was your approach on that?
That's a tough one, and I'm trying to think of the go back in time element also. It's tough because I mean everything that I guess the main thing I would like if it's like, hey, go back in time, tell yourself something. I mean the best thing I could say is it's okay for it to be canceled. It's okay. It's like it's gonna be okay. Because I really there's I don't want to get like negative, but it's probably worth sharing. You carry a lot of weight when you cancel other people's work. Like it's like I didn't do that by myself that game. So there were other people who had contributed stuff, other people like other folks who animated, did art, tile sets. We didn't have any music yet, so that's one thing. But thinking about putting it away, if I knew that we were gonna take it out again and finish it so many years later, it's funny. It's kind of a circles back to your question about like shocking that we could actually do GBA game in a GBA game in 2025 is nuts. Uncle Mimic also likes to excavate old technology.
This is
and
true.
repurpose
Artifacts,
it.
yeah.
Very fitting.
Relics,
See,
relics.
there are layers here.
We're
Learning so much. And he wears a trench coat also.
You only took it off like right before the interview. I remember it was on.
We'll have to cut to that.
Yeah, cut right there. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess it'd be nice to like let myself know it's going to be okay. It's like it's going to be okay. It's all going to work out. But it, I don't know. As far as practical things, oh man, like everything was written down. Like things were well documented. It's not like I was left like in. I'm trying to answer like 2 or 3 questions overlapping, and I'm getting a little spun in circles. But I mean, myself, I'm doing it to myself. But the task of opening that up. I'll just share a quick horror story. So we're like, yeah, we're gonna finish on the advance. Cool, awesome. We got it all lined up. LRG is on board. WayForward is, of course, like in full support of this, doing this thing. Perfect. Mike Strege is back. We hadn't worked together for over a decade. Perfect. Like everything's there. So we open up the project. We get it working. Hooray. And now it's time to go, all right, what have we got? And what tasks are left to turn this into an actual real game? Well, and it's generally 50% of stuff exists, 50% doesn't exist. And so, okay, so what is the 50% that does not exist? Well, I went back to the GDD, but the problem is each time that game struggled to take off, I wrote a new design and adapted it based on where industry trends were going. People were saying, hey, the game is too big. Hey, the cartridge is going to be too large. Hey, it's a big, long, involved quest game. And I'd take that feedback on it or rewrite it. So when I'm reading the documents, one is called Shantae Advance, one is called something else. And I'm not kidding. One of them was called Shantae and the Seven Sirens. And I open it up and I'm like, oh, this is Half Genie Hero.
Oh.
So the content of Half Genie Hero was in the GDD name Shantae and the Seven Sirens. And Shantae Advance was about collecting songs of the sirens so that you could play it for this monster that was going to show up and you try to like basically, I don't know, lull it back to sleep or something. Which was the plot of Risky's Revenge, game number 2. So it was all 3 games. And then when looking through the assets, in other words, because there's a tendency to not want to lose the work and not throw it away. Each time there was something that was good that I felt was worth holding on to, I would just move it forward into the next game. That's why some of the stuff ended up in Risky's Revenge. Some of the ideas and scenarios ended up in Half Genie Hero, and the actual title of a game ended up being Seven Sirens for the 5th game. So then I'm like, oh, wait a second. This game lost almost its entire identity.
Wow.
So what is it actually going to be? And so we ended up going basically to the closest thing to the original source, the first GDD, as possible, and saying, okay, forget all the evolutions because they've all been sort of repurposed. Pieces had all been repurposed. So people are like, what was the Lost Shantae game? Well, in some ways, you've already played some of the pieces that were lost. You played them in Risky's Revenge, you played them in Half Genie Hero, and you played, well, I guess none of them in Seven Sirens, other than the name. So, yeah, it ended up being that some things had to be recreated or created from scratch in the spirit of what they would have been, and some were more literally exactly what they would have been.
Well, plus you had to take out the wagon wheels.
The wagon wheels are gone. Yeah, that was going to be for something. I don't. Yeah, go ahead. You can explain the wagon wheels.
So Shantae GBA was our testing grounds. Whenever we wanted to experiment with some new tech for any other game, it somehow always made it there. And in my mind, I've seen most of my memory of it was on the title screen, these wagon wheels that were kind of rotating in 3D, because it was something we were trying out for some, I don't even know what we tried it out for, but
I have a feeling that something like that ended up being in the SpongeBob the movie game, because there's those car driving sections with the paddy wagon with the weird curving mode 7 ground. I don't know if it's literally that, but yeah, it was attempting to do sprite rotation with a squash rotation. You know, when you rotate sprites or mode 7 stuff, it's generally like, oh yeah, you're rotating it. This was a perspective wagon wheel, which was going to go on Roddy Top's cart, or and they were rotating but also squeeze, because you could do sprite stretching, right? And then the rotation looked funny, so there was a little additional animation of a wobbly wheel that would sit next to it that would look like the 3D edge of the wheel. That's the thing. Yeah, this is the thing you're talking about.
Yeah, so I know, one of the first things he had to do was go in and rip out all that test code for the experiments that made it into that.
Yeah, you'd think it would have been in
mutation.
We didn't put it in some debug room called wagon wheel test. It was on the title screen.
The title screen.
It's like Shantae Advance. Here's some wagon wheels.
I wish we had footage you could cut to that as B-roll.
Here's some wagon wheels. Yeah.
You know, that made me think of something on the fly. You said that sometimes you just have tests, experiments that may end up in future games.
Yeah.
Do you ever try to push the envelope? How hard can we go? I mean, because some of it could be perceived as wasted time. This is unnecessary, but some of it is just your own creativity. How high can I jump? I only have to jump 24 inches, but I want to jump 36. I only have to do this many push-ups to pass the test, but I want to see how strong can I get. Some of it, like you said, is testing grounds of what can we do. But have you ever tried to, in addition to testing grounds, just how much can we do? Because even though not necessarily, it is just part of that, I don't know, author struggle, self-internal wanting to be more creative or push the hardware.
We actually do that all the time, really. We'll put in as many sprites as we can just to see when it starts breaking down. You'll get line tears or something, or it just can't keep up.
I remember when we did Lit on WiiWare, we had 40 megabytes for the entire game file, and it's that's nothing. But within that, we had full 3D environment and characters, cinematics, full VO for 2 characters. We crammed so much stuff in there. So I think we're always whenever we get our hands on hardware, we're always going to crank it up to 11 and just kind of experiment and see.
Can we break it?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and also minimum system requirements. I know on PC especially, sometimes we'll turn everything on and see how much we can max it out, so we know okay, what kind of hardware will this actually run on. And it also helps us to tell the artists early on, okay, this is what you can do and this is where you have to stop.
Those restrictions are good.
Yeah, the restrictions
they actually help you in a lot of cases be more creative. So that's a good thing. Yeah, we have tests. There were a lot of times benchmark tests, hey, just we're starting a thing. There reminded me of one. I'm sure you guys remember this one. And I'll preface this with there is not a Shantae PS3 game, but
Or is there?
yeah,
I'm
no,
just kidding.
but
I've
Shantae,
seen it. It's right over there, actually.
but the project the Shantae PS3 thing we demoed, we made a thing, and all it was like 2D, I don't know, HD 2D animated Tinkerbats like falling into a room, and then just seeing how much we could fill it. Do you remember that?
I remember that.
Yeah, and I think at about 150 Tinkerbats,
Yeah.
it would crash. So
That's so cool.
Yeah.
all it was, and I think maybe the character might have been able to walk left and right. I don't recall exactly, but I think it was just like, yeah, that's a case where it's like, well, that's not a project, and it wasn't for anything. Like we weren't, there was no game designed, there was no GDD written, there was no plan. It was just, we have a PS3 dev kit. Let's put something on the screen and let's do some tests. And it's like, all right, let's just fill the screen with Tinkerbats. And I mean, not filling them like vertically. It was like an actual collidable 2D world, and let's just spot them in the sky and just fall them in, and they can just march back and forth around on the ground. But stuff like that's really, really cool.
Yeah.
I guess it's nice to kind of, because sometimes it's just even hard to start creatively especially on a new platform if you don't know what it can exactly do.
Yeah.
We did a lot of that on 3DS. I misunderstood 3DS quite a lot when we first were getting in the pre-dev kit phase, because we only had documentation, and I thought the 3D slider was something that you could control for gameplay. So I thought if I slid Mighty Switch Force, for example, was supposed to be, and I think the Shantae 3DS game kind of is a similar. It's like multi-plane gameplay. It's like here's multiple layers of gameplay, and you move between them. All my early documents had it that you were moving between gameplay layers by sliding.
You're
the
using
slider.
it almost like a gameplay button.
Yeah, it's like games where like fighting games. What am I thinking of? What's the treasure game? Guardian Heroes. You fight and you're moving between 3 lanes. It's like, okay, you're close, middle, far, right?
Yeah.
Guardian Heroes. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, it's like boop, 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 boop. I thought you were going to be able to do that with the slider. I didn't know the slider was literally like it's practically like a contrast dial was on the Game Boy. So yeah, sometimes you just misunderstand.
Another example of that, we had to get special allowance when we did Daffy Duck.
Are you talking Duck Amuck?
Yeah, to close the system, because same thing, when you close the system, it triggers something in the original DS, and we were thinking, oh, can we do gameplay about that? But the intent is not that. The intent is, oh, no. When you close the system, you're stopping your game, you're pausing your game.
Right, yeah.
So we had to really kind of petition the idea that when you close the system, Daffy's in there and he's talking to you while it's closed. But that was another thing where, yeah, we're pushing against the limitations and trying to eke out every bit of unique gameplay.
Right, you close the lid, and it's like, who turned out the lights?
Exactly.
And you're playing. You're actually still pressing the L and R button,
Yeah.
because they're the only ones exposed to you. So you're actually playing the game still. But I guess that's just because, again, it was getting early stuff. I mean, originally you were asking about, like, I guess sort of benchmark tests, but this is sort of related. I guess it's sort of R&D stuff.
Cool.
Is when we see early stuff and it says there's a button that puts, or basically the lid is a button.
Yeah.
We're like, oh, the lid's a button. Okay, got it. But
we're one of we always go above and beyond trying out whatever is available. So Vitamin Connection on Switch uses everything available, even like the IR sensor. We're one of the few. We're lit with emotion stuff. We're one of the few pairs of games on Nintendo Wii where it was the Wii and the DS. You combine our Batman games and they can interact and play with each other. Like less than a dozen games did that. And then we did the same thing with our Smurfs game on 3DS and Wii U. And again, they're communicating and they're passing characters back and forth. But we love tapping into that stuff. And a lot of things, people look back and they're like, I didn't even know that Game Boy Color had a IR sensor and remote and all this kind of stuff, because nobody uses that stuff.
You want to hear something crazy? Do you remember when part of this is also, it's just like reading what the things can do, or going to a summit where they show us the technology, and then for Mighty Switch Force with the eShop, you remember the eShop wasn't open yet, and I remember we're like, can we like somehow make the game bigger? Do you remember this? I mean, were we just talking about DLC before DLC was common? We ended up adding more to the game and adding more levels. Now that's like every game does that. I'm not saying we invented DLC, but we were doing weird. That was a weird. The reason for the DS thing with the clamshell, by the way, the Game Boy Advance SP clamshell did not put it in sleep mode. That was a new concept. So understanding that it was for sleep mode. I mean, phones are like go to sleep mode, but back then it was like, oh, the lid is a button. What does the button do? Well, it does sleep mode. Well, can you just not put it in the sleep mode? You use the button anyway. This is just weird ways that. Yeah, go ahead. This is just how we play with the tech, I guess.
Well, and two design experiments that had nothing to do with pushing the limits of technology, but like would the design work? One the 3DS that reminded me, because the original concept for Switch Force was that you had to see in 3D. The only way to know was to see in 3D. But then of course the rule for good reason is, well, what about someone with one eye? Like they can't, so you couldn't play our game if you had one eye. So obviously we fixed that. But an even worse idea that we tested like many years before was, you know those like Magic Eye stereogram things? Where
I was just going back to this stuff a week ago.
Yeah, if your eye diverges and you see a 3D thing.
Yep.
We actually had a game, and the concept was this thing is taking over your world. So it starts out, and then it's just a little bit, but eventually it's like taking over your whole environment. And then the final boss, you couldn't even play the boss unless you could see it do the stereo, because they were all, it looked like static, like just white noise. And unless you could divert your eyes, you wouldn't even be able to see the
Which
the
is
boss.
like only like half the people can even do
Yeah,
that.
I know. It was a bad idea, but it was.
I didn't tell you this, but I started putting that into the current Shantae Advance game because there were I had files. Yeah, I had rooms where it's like, what's the thing you have to input to solve this puzzle? It's like, oh, the answer is left, right, up, down. I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm like, they're big chunky shapes. And I was like, with that, like that was probably and you're right. I'm like, that was probably a terrible idea back then, but I never had the satisfaction of does it work or not. So yeah, I'm like, yes, I messed with it again. I'm like, it works, but so many people can't see these things. This is horrible. And I don't know, like stereograms or whatever those are called. So I mean, people own various copyrights and methods for making them, and I'm like, it's probably not smart to mess with it. But this is so funny you brought that up. That was, oh my gosh, that's like way bad. That's pre us. Oh my gosh, that's
we actually experimented on Super Nintendo SNES. Because I remember
I think
we were trying to figure out how to do the noise pattern in the sprites.
We wanted to animate a Magic Eye, basically.
Yeah, the problem is when you animate it, your eye can't lock in as well.
Yeah.
And so making things move in it is really tough for your eye to try. So even people who are good at seeing those, you can't.
It's so funny. But yeah, you're right. But everything that's like new and interesting or weird and exciting, like if it can have some gameplay use, I think that's where it's the most interesting. So I guess that probably speaks a lot to the company. The more it's so funny, the more we talk, the more that the Uncle Mimic thing connects for me. I'm like, it's like why
we're going back,
right? Because if you're thinking about somebody, like this is why I think we like Nintendo so much. Whenever there's something new and unusual, it's like, whoa, what does that do? Like when they have something that's huge innovation, like it's crazy for the e-cards or the card E reader, depending on where you're from, card E or e-card. The challenge of trying to get a game in
printed on a card.
Was it 8K?
Yeah.
You had to make your game 8K?
Was it even that much? I think maybe it was.
But go find any file on your computer that's 8K and think about how you would make a game with such limited memory.
Now we can do it with QR codes. We should just have a game that QR codes are everywhere in the whole. You can't.
You can fit a lot of code now into QR codes, into that. So
if you had enough QR codes,
but there's basically as much data as what would that be? Would that be similar to like a typical URL, or even that much? Would it be a dozen lines of text file? I'm trying to think what. No, in 8K.
Oh, in 8K.
I mean, I guess the whole thing is. See, this is how we work. I don't know. The technology sounds like magic to me. So I asked someone who would actually know, which is Voldy. But yeah, I think whenever we hear about a new cool innovation, like first thoughts usually go to, oh, that sounds cool. Like, how could we use that for gameplay purposes?
And I think a lot of it comes from, wanting to please the audience. It's like this person just spent a bunch of money on a Switch, or just spent a bunch of money on a 3DS or a PlayStation Vita or whatever. Let's make a game that makes them feel like that was a good decision. Like, oh man, I could only play this here.
Remember that Joy Straw?
Yeah.
Or a Sip and Puff where you you
This
blow
is a
or
good.
suck.
This is
and
Yeah,
this
one
is
of our
Oh,
one of
yeah.
our
yeah,
R&D
we did.
efforts was
We have a game.
by one
Ah.
of our directors, James, who did gameplay entirely with blowing and sucking into a straw for people, so like something that a quadriplegic could play.
Absolutely.
really cool too. That was neat.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Anyway, I think we got way off.
No, no,
Yeah.
that's
I don't
I'm
know.
not sure how
We're-
you're going to edit this into an actual like.
yeah. I'm
who
trying to think.
knows?
What were you actually? What were you asking in the first place? And it
We
doesn't
nailed
matter.
it. We
I'm
answered
sure.
it good.
Yes.
I
So,
think I
yeah.
think we were good if you would time travel.
Right.
Yeah.
Two final topics. One, because you did mention some of your love for Nintendo, and I've got to mention the Nintendo Switch 2. What are your thoughts on it? And if you can talk, what would you like to put on it, or any of the creative aspects that the system has to offer, whether it's improved motion controls, it's improved touch controls, it's improved HD Rumble 2.0, it's mouse controls, everything. Because some of what you were saying and getting to know you more and more, and how you work and how you want to push the envelope and be creative. And I'm playing a game like Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour, and all of the different intricacies in the controller, in the system that they put in. I'm like, gosh, I could see you doing even more. And I'm just excited as a gamer, as a fan, as a friend, what you could do. What do you think of the system? And what would you like to do on it if you could say it? Or if you can't say it, that's okay. You can just tell me and we'll edit this part out.
I just the first thing that sprung to mind when I heard about it is I want to do something with multiple mouse inputs.
Yeah.
You know, like the wheelchair game, but
Yeah.
something like that. I feel like there's so many possibilities, and that's something that you can't do anywhere. I mean, I guess you could plug two mice into your PC, maybe. I don't know.
You wanna
I've never
do
tried
a-
that,
you
but
wanna
like something.
Do a
with two
crazy
mice.
crazy climber.
Yeah.
Old
Maybe
school arcade.
something like that. Wax on, wax
Yeah,
off.
there
I
you
don't
go.
know.
Oh.
Something.
Or Quap.
Yes.
Oh, yes. No. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway,
See,
I'll defer to these guys.
Do a co-op with a ATST, and you're trying to shoot Ewoks, but it keeps falling over.
Yes.
That's free.
Wow.
There. Call Disney.
Wow.
Does anyone know anybody over there?
Get the license.
Let's see here. This is a real weird answer for me, because I usually would want to go straight to something that's like hyper creative, but for whatever reason, I think because my experience with it is so far been like, oh cool, it's like a huge upgrade. Like, this one doesn't strike me as some new, you're right, the mouse feature, but a lot of it just feels like, oh, everything is just working a lot better. This is a little bit unusual. It feels a little bit like when moving from, I don't want to undersell it, but like there have been Nintendo systems in the past where I'm like, ooh, I got the new one, it's an upgrade, it's better. This is more than that, but it definitely initially feels like everything is just running better and faster, which makes me very aware of like how many games we've done, oh man, in the last 5, 6, 7 years, I don't know, where the Switch version had to struggle to keep up with like the PC or like the higher end consoles as far as performance goes.
And we've already heard from some of our fans that the WayForward games, if there's ever a WayForward game where we were doing so much on the Switch version that it might have struggled a little bit on some of the frame rates or stuff, a lot of that runs so much smoother on Switch 2 now, the same game.
Without a patch, just the system allowing it to. That's awesome.
Right. It makes, but it makes me want to see some of those, the higher fidelity. So, for example, on some of the games, the Switch version will have environmental effects or some rendering stuff or some lights maybe turned off.
Or even 30 frames a second. Versus
Yes,
60
exactly. And it's like, well...
and maximum 1080p.
Right. Yeah. And for us, we usually, all of our Nintendo development up until a certain point, I want to say in our history, was we're making exactly what we're making is what you're playing. But when it's ones that have a kind of a chasm between the Switch version and let's say the PS5 version, what we're playing or like what I've got up on my screen when I'm working, it's usually that things are getting down sampled or, simplified in some ways. That can lead to some things that are like, hey, the Switch version can be can be charming, can actually have things that make it really cool. A lot of times it was like, well, it's not 4K, but it's got like HD Rumble. That's really cool.
Right.
So there were trade-offs. I'm not saying there were inferior products at all. But what I am saying is like seeing that now you could have the best of both. You could still have like, oh, we got all the cool HD Rumble and Nintendo isms, and we can combine it with the highest fidelity versions of the games that existed. It'd be cool to be able to have a few of our games. This doesn't apply to a lot of them, but there are a handful where I'm like, oh, it'd be nice to get that performance boost.
Yeah,
that sounds great. And your overall fans of the system too, been enjoying your experience the last couple of weeks?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh man, yeah, love it. Yeah,
I've gotten gold in all the Mario Karts. I'm not even usually a Mario Kart fan, but it's just so amazing. I love the system so far.
I'm really enjoying that also. Yeah, and same. It's like mostly Mario Kart's where the time's been going, but I also really agree with everyone who's speaking highly of that Pro Controller. Pro Controller is great, and you know what? Also, I lucked out and got the GameCube controller.
Same here.
And that thing, playing that feels good. Playing that with Mario Kart is awesome. I can't say enough good things about that. It's a fantastic experience. I love playing that game with that controller. So.
Even though it's not officially marketed as a controller to work with all of your Nintendo Switch 2 games, because it has some limitations, like the two control sticks don't click in.
Sure.
For instance, so it's marketed just for Nintendo Switch Online, Nintendo GameCube games. I have played The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild and The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. Well, not The Wind Waker. Well, The Wind Waker too, and Tears of the Kingdom with it. I'm like, I'm back to 2001 again, playing The Wind Waker and Twilight Princess with a GameCube controller, or like you said, Mario Kart World, and it is neat. Yeah. Even like Capcom versus SNK 2 EO, that was the version that I played most on Nintendo GameCube with the GameCube controller back in like 2003. And it wasn't the most favorable system because the D-pad on the GameCube controller was a little smaller, but like I mastered how to make that game work on that controller. So now playing Street Fighter 6 with a GameCube controller, I have a very different set that I have saved of button layout for versus the Pro controller. And I'm like, dude, this just feels back like Capcom SNK 2 EO, where the B button is now the hard punch and the A button is now the medium punch.
That'll be fun to try.
Hard kick, X is the medium kick. So I have my whole thing locked in because that GameCube controller has the octagonal gate that you can grind to, which is really good for Hadouken. Anyways, now we're like going off.
This sounds good. Oh man. I might. I've played a ton of Street Fighter 6, a lot of it. Yeah. But maybe I have to restart a fresh game with that just for that controller.
It's neat. And going in between the two.
That does sound good.
And something that I can't help but think. You mentioned, your test, your idea of the 3D scope and how you would see things, and you were just mentioning it recently that like this does work a little bit better now with today's lack of limitations, but still like it alienates a fan base that maybe couldn't see or have one eye or something like that with the up down or up or up down left right things to see. I don't know, is a little bit of a spoiler, maybe not too much, but in that, speaking of earlier, the Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour demo, there is a demo in mouse mode where you click in and you have to distinguish what's the shape on screen. Like, it's a triangle or a square. And you go over and it's like, empty space, oop, rumble. Empty space, rumble. And like, you could feel it. I'm like, that could be a way how you could incorporate, here's a unique puzzle-solving mechanic of what is the weapon, what is the locking pattern that Shantae or any kind of character or in a future WayForward game, you heard it here first, I'm coming up with ideas. But like, knowing that you have these creative minds, that you like to push the envelope, and that you want to take every little piece of the system, I can't wait to see what you all have done next, because just this little conversation has got me thinking, I didn't know that you did that before. I didn't know that you could do that. So
it's like, it would be I'm Mighty Rumble Force or something. Because our Mighty games were, a lot of them were experimental, like Flip Champs with the 2 screens, Switch Force was the 3D. So a Rumble specific Mighty Rumble Force.
Definitely looking forward to getting stuff out of all the special features of the system.
All right, it's been a pleasure talking with the three of you today. Really appreciate it. I hope everybody watching Indie Mania gives an extra shout out and extra thanks to WayForward. Learn something, had some fun, seen some developer insights and all that goes into making games. And my last question, I guess, is, well, unless if you have a secret to tell us, which
Oh, wow.
might be too much to ask for, but that's the semi-jokingly question. Do you have any special thing to give us? The real last question, though, is kind of like last year. Any little nugget of advice for the aspiring indie developer out there? Big, several dozen studio team, very small, one, 2 person team. Advice, encouragement, motivation, any final words? Unless if you do have that special game or tease to drop.
Oh my goodness.
We're gonna
Put
be
you on the spot.
yeah, we're gonna be at Anime Expo soon, so we might be able to reveal some stuff. We actually don't know yet because we're still in negotiations, but hopefully we can reveal something. Nothing we can firmly reveal today. Yeah, my advice would be if you want to make games, just start making games. Almost everybody at our studio started making hobby games as soon as they were able, and boy, is it so much easier to do that now in 2025 than it was in like 2005 when I was kind of getting into it. So just start making games and then look for the communities, look for other artists you can work with, look for other programmers you can work with. It not only does that help you make your games, but I feel like collaborating also motivates you. It's if you're doing something just by yourself, it's easier to give up on it. So that would be my 2 pieces of advice. Just start making games. They're going to come out bad, but that's because you get the bad ones out of the way, and then you'll eventually make great ones, and then make friends in the community. Some of the people that Matt and I were friends with 20, 30 years ago are now some of the most famous professionals. Like, it's great to see hobby people come up together. So get in those communities as well.
Yeah, and I could, well, they know I could go off for hours talking about this, but I'm not. I'm going to keep it short. Basically, echoing again what Adam said is just make games, because Unity's free, Unreal's free. You can just make games for any platform, and you can publish on Steam, itch.io, mobile, all the consoles have indie programs. So basically just make something and get it out there. And then the only thing I really want to add is try game jams, because there's nothing like a game jam to really hone your skills. It's like boot camp, and you will learn so much from the other people on your team. You'll make sometimes lifelong friends. You'll find people who you'll either maybe get hired by, or maybe you'll be hiring them in the future. But do game jams, even the online, like sometimes they have the 1 week or 2 week like online game jams. But that's it.
Yeah, cool. I agree completely. I'm glad you brought up game jams. I probably would have said something similar. Is like, do something. My reason for thinking of that is to keep it short, because one of the hardest things is, there's everything will want your attention. It's hard to stay focused, and it's very it's like really it's tough to keep something simple and concise and short, but there's a lot to learn from the process of just starting and then finishing something, even if it's tiny. So yeah, game jam, something where you're forced to be done in a very short amount of time and have something to show for your work. I would actually even argue it's better to try something and fail at it a few days later and say it didn't work out, but at least it's done, and then you can think about what you learned and then apply it for the next time. I know there's a temptation to just go, I've got a crazy idea, and it's a dozen ideas combined, which is funny because we're just talking about Sigma Star Saga, and something that you would have to do completely on your own in isolation for years and years. I'm sure that works for some people, but I think that if you're just starting out, it's really, really nice to get some finished things and go through the whole process as quickly as possible. What's the shortest game? I actually want to ask, what's the shortest game? You answer your thing, but then I want to know what the shortest game you have personally worked on was.
So, we can't. There's lots of secret stuff at WayForward, but Matt and Voldy know that related to E3 and GDC, we've done a lot of games that are like 1 day game, 2 day games. The shortest thing I worked on that we released was the mobile version of Lit, and I remember it was short because it was like already in October when we pitched Voldy and Matt and said, hey, can we do this game for Halloween? And it's like, we're already in October. So that was like a 3-week production.
Dang. Yeah. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And that game is a lot of fun.
It's fun. Yeah. It really forces you to think what you need to boil it down, to not get focused on the fluff. And then I think to Matt's point also, finishing a game forces you to do all the things that you never thought about. Like, I need HUD, I need menus, I need a save system. It's like the less glamorous stuff. you need to learn that stuff if you want to do it for a profession, because you don't just do the combat and the mobility. You have to do every facet that's needed top to bottom. And the more you can finish a product, the more experience you're going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've shipped quite a few in less than 2 weeks because during the .com bubble, we did Austin Powers Nuclear Mojo, which
that was a weekend. That was a weekend game, wasn't it?
I thought altogether it was maybe 2 weeks, but like the bulk of it was done in like 2 days or something. And then and a lot of those Chain Reaction, Lost Vikings was like less than 2 weeks.
There was that tiny Operation mobile game, right?
Oh yeah,
that was like a day. I worked on that for a day, I think, and you programmed it, I think.
One time we shipped a Baywatch game over the weekend because it was
right. Because I didn't hear about that until I came back Monday. I'm like, oh, there's a new game, and you're like, it's done.
Yeah. Oh, that's like we started on a Friday, and my Monday was out. So just take the process from start to completion, put it up there. Like itch.io is great because you can just upload something, a web game, and it's there. So anyway,
and do what you want. Like I think there's a misconception that you have to do everything. I can't code at all. I've never programmed at all. I don't do music. Like you can focus on the stuff that you're passionate about and the stuff you do well, and you'll find other people to do the rest of it. So don't ever feel like, man, I'd love to make games, but I'm not a programmer, or man, I'd love to make games, but I'm not an artist. Find an artist or a programmer to team up with, because they're probably looking for somebody that complements them as well.
Yeah. Oh, you got one more.
This week keep going.
No, take us
home.
I better
rein myself in, but
here comes the secret.
Yes.
No,
this is it.
No,
it's a big exclusive reveal.
And the battery died. Oh, sorry.
Oh my gosh.
I heard it.
No, but things like Roblox are so great.
Yes.
Like my son, Adam's son. I know. There's nothing like Roblox for. It's got this amazing development environment, which actually, I mean, they should add some of that stuff in Unreal, like the fact that you can have multiple people all working on the same scene at once.
And UEFN as well.
And UEFN is another one thing, because they do all the heavy lifting. So you can get something up and running within minutes, and then there's so much community stuff out there for code. Anyway, just look into Roblox. I know, people think it's just for like 9-year-olds, but seriously, it's a great way to learn game development.
Yeah. That was good advice. Thank you for sharing. Thank you, all three of you, for being a part of Indie Mania. You are part of the original crew that helped make this show something special last year. And once again, on behalf of Steve, Mike, and me, we appreciate it. And I'm sure everybody watching, from fans looking forward to upcoming WayForward games to fans/fellow indie developers that look up to you as some examples in the industry of like, wow, you've done it for 35 ongoing years plus. So that advice is worth something. All right.
Well,
thank you for having
me.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Welcome. All right. That's it for this WayForward interview. Paul signing out, and back to us on the other side of this digital spectrum. Bye.
Bye.